Today, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to take one of the most popular investments on the planet, the QQQ ETF, and we're going to analyze it through a very specific lens, the lens of Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. We're going to look at it as if we're buying the whole business, not just a ticker symbol.
You know, it's easy to just see a ticker bouncing around on a screen, right? We see tech, we see growth, but if you want to invest like the masters, that's really the wrong way to think about it. You're not just buying a stock, you're buying an ownership stake in actual, real-world businesses.
So let's reframe this. When you buy a share of QQQ, what you're really doing is buying a small piece of a giant, imaginary conglomerate. For our purposes today, we're going to give it a name, QQQ Mega-Corp. And our job is to figure out if this massive corporation is actually a good business and if it's worth the price. Here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll get a sense of the scale of this thing and meet its board of directors. Then, we'll run it through 3 crucial tests, right out of the Buffett and Munger playbook. And finally, we'll deliver our verdict. Okay, let's get into it. As we're looking at it in early 2026, QQQ Mega-Corp is an absolute behemoth. It has dominant positions in some of the most critical industries in the world, like AI, cloud computing, and electric vehicles. Now, the real question for us as potential owners isn't whether the tech is cool, it's whether the business itself is worth the price tag. To answer that, you have to look at who's really running the show. And in this corporation, the board of directors are the top 10 companies in the fund. And here's the wild part. These 10 companies alone make up a whopping 48.51% of the entire fund. Think about that. Your success as an owner is almost entirely tied to just 10 names. So let's meet this incredibly powerful board. Let's take an inventory of what you're actually buying when you buy into this Mega-Corp. All right, sitting at number 1 with almost 9% of the weight is NVIDIA. They're basically selling all the picks and shovels for the big AI gold rush. Then you've got the titans, Apple and Microsoft, dominating consumer hardware and business software. Right behind them is Amazon, the king of e-commerce and the cloud. At number 5, we've got Tesla, pushing the boundaries in EVs and robotics. Then there's Alphabet, Google, which is so huge it's on the list twice, followed by Meta and its social media universe. Number 9 is Broadcom, a huge player in semiconductors. And then kind of crashing the tech party at number 10, we have Costco, the good old retail giant. Okay, time for our first test, the cash flow test. Buffett has this great warning for investors. He tells them to stay away from what he calls treadmill businesses. We need to figure out if our board members are cash-guzzling treadmills or if they're actually cash-generating printing presses. So what's a treadmill business? Well, it's pretty much what it sounds like. It's a company that has to run as fast as it possibly can, spending every dollar it earns just to stay in the exact same place. It's a tough way to create any real long-term value for owners. And the contrast between a treadmill and a printing press couldn't be more clear. One just eats cash to stay alive, while the other spits out piles of cash with very little effort. So what's the verdict on our QQQ Mega-Corp? Well, it's overwhelmingly a collection of printing presses. The cash flow quality here is easily an A+. I mean, Apple, Microsoft, and Alphabet are generating hundreds of billions in free cash flow. Even Amazon, thanks to its AWS cloud business, has become a cash machine. But we have to ask a Munger-style question, especially about our number 1 holding, NVIDIA. Yeah, the cash they're generating right now is absolutely massive. But is this a durable, long-lasting boom, or is it a temporary windfall before the competition inevitably catches up? That's a key question. All right. Next up, the retained earnings test. This audit asks a really simple question. When these companies keep $1 of profit, that's your money, by the way, do they manage to turn it into at least $1 of new market value? In other words, are these CEOs good at spending your money? And what's really interesting here is that inside our top 10, you basically have 2 very different kinds of CEOs. On one side, you have the cannibals, like Apple and Meta. They take their profits and just eat their own shares through buybacks, which makes your slice of the pie bigger. On the other side, you've got the empire builders, like Tesla and Broadcom. They hold on to their earnings to build new factories, buy other companies, and fund risky, ambitious projects. And it is so important to understand that the empire builder strategy is much riskier. Take Broadcom. It grows by buying other companies, and this creates an asset on the balance sheet called goodwill. If that acquisition doesn't work out, that goodwill gets written off and all that shareholder money just vanishes. Tesla is doing something similar, retaining its earnings for this huge, high-risk, high-reward bet on factories and robotics. So for our final test, we're going to use one of Charlie Munger's favorite mental models, inversion. Instead of asking what will make this company succeed, we're going to flip the question completely on its head and ask what could kill this Mega-Corp? What is the biggest threat to its long-term survival? And the answer really starts right here. It's the sheer concentration. When nearly half of your entire investment is riding on the success of just 10 companies, the fate of the entire enterprise is tied to a very small group. A big problem for one of them is a big problem for all of them. And that leads us directly to the number one risk. It's a massive collective concentration in artificial intelligence. Think about it. NVIDIA, Microsoft, Google, Meta, Broadcom, all these major players are betting the entire farm on the AI revolution. If that revolution stalls, or if some other technology comes along, a huge chunk of your portfolio could get hit, all at the same time. But then, you look at board member number 10, Costco. Costco is this beautiful, simple hedge against that really complex technology bet. Costco doesn't care about AI. It sells hot dogs and paper towels with incredible efficiency. It's just a wonderfully simple business that reminds you of Munger's advice. Stick with businesses you can easily understand. So, we've run our audit, we've put it through the tests, and now it's time to put it all together. What is the final verdict on owning QQQ Mega-Corp today? Well, here's the bottom line. Our audit confirms that the value you get here is immense. These are cash-printing machines run by smart people and protected by some of the most powerful economic moats in history. But the price you pay for that quality is very, very high. The market is pricing these companies for absolute perfection. So the single most important takeaway from all of this is pretty simple. You are not diversifying. Let me repeat that. You are not diversifying in the traditional sense. You are making a specific, highly concentrated bet. And that bet is on the continued dominance of American technology and more specifically on the future of AI. As a potential owner, you just have to be comfortable with those odds. It always comes back to this timeless piece of wisdom from Warren Buffett, doesn't it? Price is what you pay, value is what you get. And you can only really understand if the price is fair once you've done the work to understand the value of the business you're buying. You know, learning how to do this kind of business-focused analysis is just a powerful, powerful tool for any investor. It completely shifts your mindset from being a speculator to being a business owner, and it's absolutely a skill that you can learn. If you really want to master this kind of audit for yourself, all the principles are laid out with just incredible clarity in the book that inspired today's analysis, Buffett and Munger's Accounting Mastery, Principles for Business Clarity. It really gives you the tools you need to start thinking like an owner. Thanks for joining me.